What is up, creatives? This is Tom. Welcome back to another video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that little sort of intro snippet segment. This is obviously what the video is about today. This is about how to film yourself, tips to film yourself. Obviously we are in a fairly unique situation right now where we're being told to minimize social contact. However, it's also just important to be able to film yourself if you're out. You maybe only just have a tripod, maybe you don't even have a tripod and you're just wanting to get the most out of your shots and film yourself as the subject. So I'm going to go through some of the tips and techniques that I use during that intro sequence. I know it's not the sort of best sequence in the world, but it's a perfectly sort of watchable internet sequence. It would be great for like Instagram, that type of thing. So yeah, I'm just going to go through some of the techniques that I use to make that. So first of all is the type of angles and the type of shot that you're deciding to use during your video. So that little sequence, the whole point was I'm sort of showing off that I'm shooting that myself. So I wanted the sequence to open on me. That kind of was the main subject of the video. However, if it wasn't the main subject of the video, what I might have done is, you know, did a nice sort of opening, establishing wide shot or something like that. The next one is just angles. Angles. Pretty much the most important thing from this video, if you take anything away from this video, is just shoot as much stuff as possible. There's a good sort of illustration of this, which was when I was doing some sort of walking. I was filming myself before and after the walk. I would go back and do the walk again. And also I did this sort of shot where I jumped down off the wall and I just filmed my feet landing. But it's all stuff that you can use during the edit. You don't want to get back and think, oh God, it would have been really useful to have that. Make sure you get that when you're out shooting. Next tip is to focus on the details. There's a couple of shots throughout this edit where the details really stand out. I wanted to sort of almost like capture the edges of the camera being moved and the details in my eye at one point and the details on my watch as I sort of brought it up to my face. All of these multiple angles and multiple choices just give your video a much more cohesive feel. Next, I want to talk about focal lengths. Now, I shot this video entirely on the Canon 90D, which I decided was probably the kind of most appropriate camera to use for this shoot, and we'll talk a little bit later about why that is. But I shot this on the Sigma 18 to 35mm f1.8, which is just pretty much my favorite lens of all time. And the zoom aspect on that lens really did make a difference. It meant that I was able to get nice and wide if I wanted to, but also then zoom in at 35mm, get a little bit more of a compressed image and a really nice depth of field in the background of that image. I would recommend shooting with a zoom lens if you're able to do that, or multiple prime lenses. You're going to have a hard time shooting a video of yourself if you're maybe restricted to a 24mm focal length, for instance, or for that point, a 200mm focal length. I would really just recommend you get a range of focal lengths to play around with. So next, let's talk about the camera. As I just briefly mentioned it there, I wanted the Canon 90D. To use the Canon 90D on this shoot is because for a couple of reasons. First of all, its autofocus is amazing. Now, the autofocus on this camera, like I said, it has sort of eye and face tracking autofocus, and it's really, really great. You don't want to rely too much on that. So there were a couple of shots in this video, and I'll illustrate which ones those were, where I decided to use manual focus or autofocus. For instance, on the one where my eye was in focus, I used auto for that because you're sort of close up. You don't totally know whether you're going to just nail focus every time, so I just let the camera do the work. However, the one where I was jumping down off the wall, I set that manually just because it has a detail on the wall that I could go over and manually set focus on before the shot, and then I just go over to the wall, sit on it and jump down. I know for sure that that is going to be in focus. Autofocus is an amazing tool for video production, and it's super useful if you're filming yourself, but don't feel like you have to use it on every single shot, because you will, I guarantee you, miss focus on some of them. And the next reason I wanted to use the Canon 90D for this production is the flip out screen. Now, of course, I could have used a camera monitor on top of my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, for instance. But again, just having a flip out screen on the side of the camera is just so useful. If you have a camera which you can't articulate the screen and you don't have access to a monitor, you are really going to struggle filming yourself. It's certainly not impossible, but it is just an extra thing that you have to think about. You know, you have to then go behind the camera, set it on a tripod, set your focus, then run around and go back and look at the shot each and every time. With one of these flip out screens, that sort of eliminates that as an issue, and you're just going to find it way easier. So now let's talk about frames per second, or the frame rate that I shot this in. So this project was a 25 frames a second project, and I shot most of this, or actually I shot all of this B-roll in 50 frames a second. So I just gave myself a little bit more leeway in the edit to be able to slow it down by 200% to just get a little bit of slow motion. Now the high frame rate option is an amazing option for this type of B-roll. It gives you lots more flexibility in post to be able to sort of just, you know, slow things down or speed things up or speed ramp, that type of thing. Don't feel though like you have to use slow motion on every single shot. Again, the shot where I sort of jumped off the wall, that was quick because having that in slow motion just wouldn't necessarily have looked great. But again, I think just use your best judgment. If something would have looked good in slow-mo, then go with that in slow-mo. You know, for instance, the shots where somebody's walking close to camera, all that type of thing is really useful to have in slow motion because it just makes everything feel a little bit more cinematic. Now, I've got two more tips for you. First of all is a pre-production thing, and that is a shot list. Before you go out, I would just thoroughly recommend almost like watching a ton of these videos of this type of thing and figure out what you want to shoot before you go and shoot it. I mentioned at the start of the video that this took me 30 minutes to film. That's because I had pretty much a pinned down shot list of everything that I wanted to cover. I was out shooting in golden hour, as you can obviously tell at the beginning of the video, so I didn't have long in terms of light. Went down my shot list, ticked them off, bang, 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 and then I pretty much knew that I was going to be able to have an easy time in the editing room afterwards. And next is the post-production process, or the editing, the little editing tricks that are going to sort of take your video to the next level. If I cut the audio and the sound design on this project, let me just show you what it looks like without anything and just the music. You can see that that's clearly quite a big difference. Again, just adding certain things in, like the waves crashing in the background, the pebbles hitting when I jump on them, just adds a big difference to the cinematic feel. Next is that I've added a couple of subtle keyframe motions in as well. Most notably here is the shot where I'm sort of walking to camera. Now, if we look at this before I put any editing on this clip, you can have a look at that here. And then simply by keyframing in just almost like just a scale zoom into the clip, I just very quickly elevated that into a much more watchable, more dynamic shot. And finally, I want to talk about the split screens and the picture-in-picture that I did. This is a technique which I'm just absolutely loving. Personally, in my own work here on the YouTube channel and on Instagram, I really like the sort of creative vibe that it gives of just sort of like scaling a clip down. I used it to open the video, as you can see here. A little techniques like that, personally, I think just go a big way into helping your story form and just feeling like a video is a bit more produced than somebody just shooting clip after clip after clip after clip. It ties together things like the sound design to really help this video feel more cohesive. There we go, guys. That is some of my thoughts and tips about how to effectively film yourself. I think you can go out and create a really great video, a very watchable piece of online content using just a camera and a tripod, and then yourself. If you have any thoughts or questions, or maybe a tip which you have experience of, shooting on your own, please share it with me down below in the comments, and I'll be down there answering as always. I'll catch you guys in the next one.